With all due respect, we're going to now invite our very, very esteemed privilege to have this guy with us. His leadership and vision has been significant on the landscaping of policing. There's a long intro, but I don't think he needs it. You all have Googled him. You've watched his stuff on TV. He is a trained ethnographer. Simon is fascinated by people and organizations that make the greatest and longest lasting impact. Over the years, he's discovered some remarkable patterns about how people think, act, and behave and communicate, and also the type of environments in which people operate at their natural best. He's the co-founder, or founder, of The Curve, a nonprofit organization created by himself and forward-thinking police chiefs, sheriffs from across the country. The Curve aims to provide inspiration, development, and resources to forward-thinking leaders. He may be best known for his TED Talk. Did you want to say something, Heather, over here? You want me to do it? No problem. He best known for his TED Talk of the concept of why, which has been viewed over 60 million times, and his video on millennials in the workplace, which has, in the first week, reached 80 million views. In its first week, that's just the first week, it has gone to be seen hundreds of millions of times. Today, Simon will be engaging in a moderated little chat here. As you can see, we've set it up with two visionary leaders who are also members of The Curve. You'll recognize them. One is San Leandro Police Chief Angela Everett. Come on up here.
Is she coming up?
The other is Under Sheriff April Fahimi Luckett with Alameda County.
Do you want to do a catwalk?
So please give a very warm and appropriate Willie welcome to Simon Sinek and these two wonderful ladies. Oh, she wants a catwalk.
What? Simon, you gonna? Okay.
Well done.
Are we good?
We're off here.
Yeah.
Hey, it's in your hands. Good luck. We're all counting on you.
Watch your step there.
No pressure, right? No pressure. Good morning, Willie. Awesome. Simon, we are so excited to have you here at Willie.
Thanks for having me.
Angela and I are huge fans, and we
Thank
won't
you.
fangirl too much while we're up here. But we know the audience is excited to hear from you. We're excited. We have a bunch of questions, but we also will engage the audience in some questions as well, so start thinking about those now. We're just going to talk to Simon about his perspective on leadership, the direction of law enforcement and where you think we're going, how your why got us here today, and we're going to let Angela kick it off.
Thank you, April. So before we jump into it, Simon, I just need to note something for everyone. As a chief of police, I think it's complete bullshit that I have to fan myself manually.
Listen, I got you. Give me that fan.
Thank you. Okay, so let's get the party started. Okay,
Yes.
So Simon, your work on the importance of knowing your why has been shared around the world millions of times, literally. Can you please explain the idea around finding your why and share your why with the audience and explain why knowing your why is so important?
So is the foundation of a house important?
Absolutely.
Right? And that's what a why is. It is the foundation of who we are. A why is the sum total of how we were raised, the experiences we had when we were growing up, that made you who you are today. Every single one of us had a different upbringing, and our whys are unique. And your why is fully formed by the time you're sort of your mid to late teens, and the rest of your life offers you opportunities to make decisions to live consistent with your why or not. You know, we call that authenticity. And that's what it is. And when you live by your why, you have an easier time finding joy in life. You find an easier time finding flow, ideas, fulfillment from your work. When you live inconsistent with your why, you will find higher stress. You will find yourself chasing material things very often. And if you really go outside of it, your friends will say to you, it's like, I don't know who you are anymore, right? And so that's what it is. It's the foundation of a house. And so when you know it, we've all used it. When you make a gut decision, I know everything tells me I should do this, but it just doesn't feel right. If you can trust that, but if you can put your why into words, then you make gut decisions better more often, and more importantly, you can explain to others why you made the decisions so they have context and understand who you are. So my why is to inspire people to do the things that inspire them, so that together each of us can change our world for the better. And everything in my life, I try very hard to make it fit that. It's who I am as a brother, as a son, as a friend, as a leader. All of the things I try to fit into that. And the greatest compliment anyone can ever pay me is, that was inspiring. That speaks to the foundation of who I am.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Show of hands, who knows their why?
So that's normal.
Yeah.
That is normal because for the same reason that it's hard to put our emotions into words. The part of the brain that controls the why, where the why exists, is called the limbic brain. The limbic brain is responsible for all of our feelings, trust, loyalty, love. It's also responsible for all of our behaviors, but it has no capacity for language. Then our neocortex, which is our Homo sapien brain, is responsible for all rational and analytical thought. It's the part of the brain you access when you expert your expertise. It has capacity for language, but it has no capacity for decision-making, and it has no capacity for feelings. And so this is why it's hard to put our feelings into words. It's a biological problem. And so it's very normal for people to not know words for their why, but that's why the work that I do, I think, it's why I'm proud of it, and it's so profoundly changed my life. When I learned to put my why into words, and more important, when I learned to help my friends put their why into words, I saw the impact. I saw joy go up. I saw decision-making be made with more confidence. I saw it happen. So it's nothing to be upset by. There is a very simple process to learn your why, but that's fairly normal.
I don't know if you know this, Simon, but in policing, we are very in touch with our feelings.
Yeah.
Authenticity is what we do best.
Yes, yes. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So for those of you who
That's a whole conversation.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that. We have that question
Yeah.
in here somewhere, okay?
That'll be part 2.
Yeah.
We can spend the whole afternoon on that one.
We know. We could spend our whole afternoon on a lot of these questions because it's just so near and dear to our heart, and we know we have a lot of growth to do. So for those of you who said that you do know your why, how many of you are living by it? Do you make every decision guided by your why? Do you bring it to work with you? Is it how you lead your people? Is it how you lead your family? Like Simon said, is it how you show up as a brother or sister or a husband or wife? All the time. We got some work to do, people.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. All right, so we'll come back to some why stuff a little bit later. Let's talk about the Curve.
Yeah.
Angela and I are very proud members of the Curve, so thank you for having us. Thank you to retired Under Sheriff Chris Sung for inviting us to join the party. It's some of the most inspirational conversations you'll ever have, so please check out thecurve.org, a little plug there for us. The Curve's mission says, we imagine a world in which all people feel justice is administered with dignity, equity, and fairness. Could you explain how and why you started the Curve, and why you're so interested in supporting our profession?
Yeah. So my connection with police goes back to college. When I was an anthropology major in college, I was interested in Western urban culture. And I went to school in Massachusetts and became fascinated by the relationship between police and the public. And so, being a good researcher, I went and did ethnography, and ethnography means putting yourself in the situation, not bringing the people to you. It's the opposite of a focus group. Focus group, you bring people to you, an ethnographer will go out into the field. And so for 3.5 months, I strapped on a vest and drove around in the Massachusetts State Police Cruiser. And learned a lot. So the interest goes back a long way. And over the years, I've interacted with various policing agencies, just stuff like this. And after the murder of George Floyd, I called some of the chief friends I had, sheriff friends I had, and just to check in on them, like, are you okay? And they were not. And I was having these intense conversations with them individually. I thought, why don't we get on a call? Like, why don't we get on a Zoom call some of the friends you have who are also going through it, but they're like-minded, and let's just talk. And so we did. We had a Zoom call. About maybe 15, 18 chiefs and sheriffs showed up, and it was therapy. It was group therapy, and they had a safe space to just let it all out. And it went on for 90 minutes, and we were all surprised when it was done. And so it was so powerful, we did it again. And it was so powerful, we did it again every few weeks. And at some point I thought, we should probably go deeper. Like I asked, what's the problem with policing in America today? And they all gave a different answer. And I thought, well, problem number one is we can't solve anything if we don't even know what the problem is. But one thing became very clear in every answer they gave, there was a connection, and the connection was leadership and culture. And we realized that leadership and culture were broken in policing. And in my work, if I'm very honest, I look at leadership theory, and I look at how leadership is taught. Military is way ahead. I mean, they're so good at teaching leadership. Corporations, depending on which corporation, but in general, corporate it's on the journey. It's doing pretty well. Policing is probably 20 years behind. And that's when we realized we had an opportunity, and that's why we started the Curve, which is to teach police leaders, and indeed rank and file, what good leadership looks like, what it feels like, how to build strong corporate culture, because it just wasn't being taught. And you had this old-fashioned system of like command and control, and I'm the boss, do as I say, or you're out of here. And you're just like, that doesn't build morale. That destroys confidence in people. And when you give someone authority and a gun, like if you have a broken corporate culture in private sector, where it doesn't even have to be the level of toxicity, just bad corporate culture where there's just increased levels of stress, you don't really trust anybody you work with, you may like them, but you don't trust them, you don't trust leadership. If you have that kind of stress and you bring it home, you kick the dog, you're not very nice to your kids, you're despondent, you watch TV, right? If you give somebody an authority and a gun, and you put them out on the street by themselves, and they carry that level of stress, it's not fair to them. Like, it's not fair to them to put them in that situation. And you realize a lot of the symptoms that we see, that when things go horribly wrong in policing, many of them can be tracked back to very broken cultures and very broken leadership models. And so we want to change that. And we want to change it from the inside out, because we recognize that the pressures from legislation and outside forces may have some impact, but the real impact and the real stickiness will come if police say, no, change starts at home. We're going to do it ourselves.
So you mentioned two things that struck my attention just now. Culture, which is critically important, which we're going to dive into a little more in a minute. But also you mentioned George Floyd. As we all know, the events that happened in 2020 were a real turning point for policing. We all went through a lot of change during that time. Some of it okay. I won't say it's good. Some of it was okay. Some of it was horrible.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, that change needed to happen.
Yeah.
Those events needed to happen to bring us to where we are today and to keep us more moving towards the future. But one of the things that I really, that struck me about 2020 was the inability of leaders to have difficult conversations with people, whether it's surrounding race, gender, policy, procedure, whatever it is. It's really difficult sometimes for us to have difficult conversations. How do you propose that we, as leaders, can have difficult conversations with people?
So you are touching on exactly the thing that needs to happen, which is the teaching of human skills, right? There's you as a profession, you do a great job of teaching the hard skills, how to effect an arrest, understanding the law, how to drive, all that good stuff. Necessary. But it's a minor part of the job. I mean, it's a part of the job, but you don't go on a police chase, big car chase every day. It happens, but it's not daily. I mean, I have an aversion to the term law enforcement, because enforcing the law is something you do sometimes. It's not the whole job. And to define your profession by one thing that you do diminishes the value of police. And if you tell a rookie you're in law enforcement, guess what that kid's going to go do? Look to enforce the law. This is why we talk about police. You are police. Police is a broad definition. I think we should do away with the term law enforcement. I think it is detrimental to the profession. As I said, it's one thing you do, and it's often the most aggressive thing you do. It's an aggressive sounding term. Police gives you the opportunity to define what kind of profession you want. So you are in the profession of policing, of which law enforcement is one thing that you do. And then the question is well, why do we need police? You know? What's the purpose of police? Ask most cops, why do we need police? You'll either get a blank stare, you'll get something that it's written on the side of the police car, protect and serve, or they'll tell you to enforce the law, which is not true. It's only one thing, right? So we believe police exist to protect the vulnerable from harm. That's why they exist. Now, if you think about that, protecting the vulnerable from harm means that if somebody has perpetrated a crime, you can chase them, you can tackle them, you can cuff them. The minute they're in handcuffs, they're vulnerable. The minute they're in handcuffs, you have to change the way you treat them because they are now the vulnerable. It's this reason you put your hand on their head as you help them into the car, because you don't want them to bump their head. They are vulnerable. And that mental change that we protect the vulnerable from harm, and it's a relative scale, is super, super powerful. I completely agree with you that and I refuse to use the term soft skills either, because hard and soft are opposites, and these skills are supposed to work in concert. The hard skills work in concert with the human skills, and all of these skills are teachable. How to have difficult conversations, how to listen, how to give and receive feedback, how to have an effective confrontation. And I'm not talking out in the field, I'm talking about with your leaders, with each other. Like somebody pissed you off, how do I do this in a way that doesn't inflame the situation? So having difficult conversations goes like this, to answer your question that you asked. Having a difficult conversation goes like this. I need to have a difficult conversation with you.
So easy.
I'm not great at this. I may say things that will trigger you and upset you, but please bear with me, I'm trying, because having this conversation is more important than not having it. So work with me. ... Right?
Yes.
And so when you do accidentally say the wrong thing, you can say, I take that back, right? And especially after George Floyd, I saw so many leaders, good leaders, do nothing.
Yeah.
They didn't have conversations about race and race relations in their agencies or in their companies. Not because they're bad people, it's that they were so afraid of upsetting someone, pissing someone off, triggering them, that they chose nothing. Mm-hmm. Just because, to your point, it's just a simple skill that's lacking. That's all it was skill.
It's interesting, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the very beginning when we talk about vulnerability and how having a difficult conversation exposes vulnerability. So can you talk to the audience a little bit about the importance of vulnerability and how we can cultivate that in our organizations? As a culture of law enforcement, it's not something that's huge, right?
Yeah.
We don't like to put our feelings out on our sleeves. We hold a lot of things back. And I think when we have those challenging conversations, it definitely opens us up,
Yeah.
right? It shows people how we really feel about things.
So the term vulnerability and having a conversation about it immediately, just in this room, a portion went,
Just
let's not talk about this. Okay, first of all, being vulnerable and vulnerability doesn't mean crying. It doesn't mean telling everybody all your secrets. That's not what it means. It's something very basic and very simple. It means admitting you made a mistake. It means saying, I don't know. It means saying, I've got some stuff going on at home, it's affecting my work. It's saying, I need help. We've all worked for people where we worked in a culture of psychological safety. We've all had it, where you could say, I made a mistake, or I need help, or I don't know, and you had no fear of retribution or hurting your promotability. In fact, we said these things with the confidence that our leader or our colleagues would rush to our support. Unfortunately, we've also all worked in corporate cultures where saying any of those things, it'll kill your career, right? And what that does is it leaves, if you work in a corporate culture where you can't say, I made a mistake, or I need help, or I don't know, what that does is it leaves you feeling very, very lonely, right? And that is a very bad place for a social animal like a human being to be. Our very success as a species is only because we're really good at working with each other. And I'm not talking about when you make a call when an officer is down or an officer's in trouble. That's different. Everybody rushes for that. I'm talking about just the mundane day-to-day, you know? Do you come to work and feel like you can trust your fellow officers with the fact that you're having a bad day? Or the fact that you screwed up and you need help? Or like, I need more training. You know, or I want to learn these human skills. I'm suck at those. I'm terrible at having difficult conversations. And the easiest way to do it, it can come from the middle. The tail can wag the dog. Believe it or not, it doesn't actually have to start from the chief or the sheriff. It can come from the middle of the organization. It is more efficient if it comes from the top. And just like children follow their parents, an organization will follow their leader. If you lie, your people will lie. If you work tirelessly to cover your own ass, your people will work tirelessly to cover their own ass. It's just how it is. And so as a chief or a sheriff, when you stand up and say, I just need to little real talk today, and do it in your own style, you know? Do a little real talk today, not having a good day, got some stuff going on. I got a kid who's struggling at school, and it's causing me some sleepless nights. I'm a little off my game. I need a little patience. Please bear with me. It's been a little hard. Or, hey, something happened, I don't know the answer, I'm looking for input. If a chief or sheriff starts speaking that way, what starts to happen is your people start speaking that way. Your people come to you and say, hey boss, I screwed up, can I get your point of view on this? Or hey boss, I'm under overwhelming stress, can I just sit and talk to you about it? Right? If the chief leads by example, you'll find that the ripples happen fairly quickly. They'll laugh at you for a little bit, they'll think you're nuts, they'll think you've lost your marbles.
Which might be true.
Which might be true. But at the end of the day, the positive impact that you have in a culture, and by the way, the person who resists it the most, I guarantee you, is probably struggling the most.
So when you said being vulnerable doesn't necessarily mean tears, I've been at my current agency, San Leandro PD. What up? Woo! Whereareblue.org, I'm hiring. Anyway, so at my first department meeting, 2 weeks into the new job, I cried during the department meeting. And I was horribly embarrassed. But I hope that showed my vulnerability. Yeah. But it also showed people that I am authentic. And this kind of leads me into the next question, that for some of our newer folks in the policing profession, they oftentimes feel like they have to go to this department and they have to assimilate to the culture, right? They don't have the opportunity to show any sort of vulnerability. Being authentic is not a thing. You have to put up that wall. What advice can you give to people like that? And it's not just for our new people. Some of us who have been in this profession for 27 years still feel that way sometimes. How do we overcome that?
It's a skill. It actually just takes practice. And if you've ever been in a romantic relationship where it's hard to communicate, or you're defensive with each other, or you fight, you do the work. And there's no magic wand, and it doesn't change overnight. Like, you look at the most successful marriages, the most successful relationships, and you ask these people, I want a relationship like yours, what's the secret? They all say the same thing, it's really hard and we do the work. Well, coming to work is relationships. That's what it is. It's a series of relationships, and you commit to doing the work, which means you study, and you ask for help, and you talk to outsiders, and you find a mentor, and you take risks, and if they don't go first, you go first. Like, I would love for you to go first and tell me your emotions or say that you're sorry, but you didn't, so I will. That's called leadership. Leadership doesn't mean you're at the top. Leadership means you go first. Literally, I lead. That is literally a demonstration of leadership. And there are a lot of people who are chiefs and sheriffs who aren't very good leaders, but there are some people who are in the rank and file who are fantastic leaders. And so that's when I say it can happen in the middle. And so if the chief or sheriff is dysfunctional, not necessarily a bad person, just doesn't have the skills, right? Occasionally bad people. I'll just tell you a quick aside. A friend of mine was struggling at work. So we went for a long walk, and she knows what I do, so she wanted some advice. And she starts like this. She says, I need your advice. Sure, what's going on? My boss is a horrible person. And I said, oh my God, does she come home and kick the dog and abuse her children? She goes, no. Yeah. I said, oh, so we don't know that she's a horrible person. Right. We just know that she's a horrible boss. Right. We know that she's a horrible, we have empirical evidence to show that she is a terrible leader, but we don't know that she's a terrible person. And so you have to be careful. You can criticize your boss, that my boss is a terrible boss, but you can't say they're a terrible person because we actually don't know that. And the narratives we form about people can be insidious. And by the way, just if we're on the topic of narratives, especially in senior circles, I realized that my own leadership team was doing this, and I was guilty of it, where we would have a leadership meeting and the name of one of our team members would come up. I'd be like, ugh, death of a party.
Yeah.
You know? Somebody else would come and be like, oh my God, so lazy. Oh, so stupid.
Yeah.
Right? Now what's happening is we're infecting the pool.
Yeah.
Now all of my leaders treat and think of that person as lazy, stupid, you know? And guess how we treat them?
Right.
And guess what they become? And we destroy their confidence because they can't do anything right. So we're all over them like white on rice, right? Like we micromanage them because of the narrative we formed. And if we're really honest with ourselves, our team is doing the same of us. They're forming narratives about who we are. And we're all upset that that's not who I am. Well, guess what we're doing? So I just realized it and just made this rule, like no more narratives. Like if somebody starts down the narrative path at leadership meetings, any one of us has to say, hold on, maybe they're just struggling. Or maybe they're having a bad day. Or maybe they're tired. Or maybe we put them in a situation where they're not working to their skills. Like it's actually they're working to their weaknesses. Like there's 30 other things that it could be. They could be lazy or stupid. That's definitely on the list. You know? But it could be a bunch of, and we would correct each other and it would tamp down on the narratives. Right. And I was very open, speaking about vulnerability, I was very open with my team. I said, look, we do this. We're stopping this. This is how we're stopping it. I expect the same of you. That if somebody starts narratives about anybody else or leadership, I expect somebody to say, well, hold on, we don't know that. Yeah. So I was very open about the fact that we were guilty, and I expected the same behavior from not only my leadership team, but the rest of the folks, the rank and file.
I hope y'all heard that. It doesn't matter what your title is, what your rank is, whether you're sworn or professional staff, we all have the ability and the responsibility to help change our culture, right? We have to stop that negative narrative. I think that's critically important. Thank you for calling attention to that, because I feel like sometimes, and I know I felt this way when I was a patrol officer, I felt like I had no control over the culture, and people would start down that path of negativity, and I was right there on the road with them. So thank you. I think we all needed to hear that message.
Gordon Bethune used to be the CEO of what was Continental Airlines. It's become United Airlines. Continental had 10 CEOs in 10 years. It was, if anybody remembers Continental, it was awful. It was awful, right? It was a terrible airline until he took over. And he realized the lack of trust. He realized all of this. And he realized that the planes were dirty and the flight attendants didn't care. And he was very clever the way he did it. He said, the passengers are on the plane for 2 or 3 hours and then they leave. This is your office for the whole day, every day. Don't clean it for them. Clean it for yourselves. This is where you have to go to work, right? Don't you want to go to work on a nice clean plane? And it's the same here, which is, this is your office every single day. This is your profession. This is your place. Like you had to train more than other people train to wear that badge or to work in this profession. Like, don't you want it to be a nice place to go to work? Right. Yeah. It's your office. Yes. It's your profession.
Absolutely.
And that applies to the locker room too for y'all out there.
It all starts somewhere, right?
It doesn't matter where you start.
Yes,
just start. Yeah.
As you were talking about that and giving your example, you mentioned trust. And all of the things that you're talking about, all the different concepts, I feel like trust is a huge part of that. How do we start to work towards building trust within our teams, a lot of, cutting out those narratives, and becoming really effective teams, leadership teams, or just in general teams, and how do we start with building that trust? I know you've worked with very elite military organizations that talk a lot about trust, and I think our audience would love to hear some of that.
Sure. So let's go back to that limbic brain. Trust is a feeling. Trust is a feeling. You can't order someone to trust you. It just doesn't work that way. Even the uniform you wear doesn't mean that people immediately trust you. Trust is a feeling born out of experience and narrative, right? And trust and what's so funny from a leadership perspective is you don't get trust just because you're in a leadership position. You actually have to earn the trust of your people. I've never heard a great leader say to their people, prove to me why I should trust you. Leaders show up and they give trust. That's one of the risks of leadership. Leaders have to give trust, but they have to earn it back. It's counterintuitive. It go back to those human skills and any kind of relationship. How do you earn trust of a friend? Well, it doesn't happen overnight. How do you earn trust of a loved one? It doesn't happen overnight. How do you win trust back after you screwed up bad? Right? It doesn't happen overnight. And actions matter, and consistency matters. And you also have to remember that people come along on the trust journeys at their own pace. You know, some people are super quick, some people are super slow. We also don't know what their previous experiences are. The last time I trusted my chief killed my career. Okay, well, I get it. Once bitten, twice shy, right? And so you have to allow people to come at their own pace. What you're referring to from the Navy SEALs, I had the opportunity to work with SEAL Team 6, and SEAL Team 6 is the more elite of all the SEALs. So you have to be in the regular SEALs before you're eligible to apply to SEAL Team 6. And I was working with the director of training for SEAL Team 6, a guy by the name of Rich Davini. And I asked him a very simple question. How do you choose who gets to go on SEAL Team 6? And he drew a graph. On the vertical axis, he wrote the word performance. And on the horizontal axis, he wrote the word trust. And he explained to me, clearly nobody wants this person on their team, the low performer of low trust. Well, let's first define performance and trust. Performance is how good are you at your job, right? Do I trust you in the field? Like, do I want to go on a call with you, right? Trust is what kind of person are you? What's your character? And the way they put it is, I may trust you with my life, but do I trust you with my money or my wife, right? So feeling safe with some, yeah. So feeling safe with somebody in the field is different than feeling safe with some of them back home, right? And he makes that distinction. So clearly nobody wants to be on the team with a low performer of low trust, clearly. Clearly everybody wants to be on a team with a high performer of high trust, clearly. What they learned is that this person over here, a high performer of low trust, is a toxic team member. And they would rather have a medium performer of high trust, sometimes even a low performer of high trust, it's a relative scale, over the high performer of low trust. And the problem is if you put a high performer of low trust on a team, very often they get promoted into a leadership position, and now you have a toxic team member who becomes a leader in an organization, and they're a high performer of low trust. This is SEAL Team 6, one of the highest performing organizations on the planet. And so if it works for them, why on earth do we think that it's different for us, right? And we have a million metrics to measure someone's performance. We promote them based on performance, and we do not evaluate their trustworthiness and their character when we choose to put them on our teams and we choose to promote them and to look after the other people in our team. Because that's what leadership is. It doesn't mean you're in charge. It means you now have been given the awesome responsibility to take care of those in your charge. And I think a lot of us forget that, and we don't often promote the right people. And we can have a whole conversation about that. You know, it's like simply taking a test doesn't qualify you for leadership, right? Yes. It means...
Yes.
There are formal and informal assessments that need to happen. And leadership is a journey, and it is an education. And at every level of leadership, we should be teaching people the human skills that they need to be better leaders. Because when they were junior, we gave them all the skills they need to basically do the job, which is go out on the field and do it, right? We're really good at teaching junior people to do what junior people do. But as you make your way up the ranks, we're terrible at teaching people the new job, which is leadership. And some of them are dual-hatted. If you're a sergeant, you're out in the field and you're a leader, you know? But we don't teach people that you have to be able to switch. And it's incredibly difficult. Middle management is the world's worst, most difficult job because you're serving above and below. You want to be everybody's friend above and below. It is awful.
That's why I got out of it.
Yeah.
Promote.
But we have to do a better job of teaching those skills and hiring people that want to be taught.
I think that's difficult in law enforcement because our metrics
Policing.
Excuse me, policing, yes, Simon. Listen, I wrote policing so much in our notes, me and Angela were like, don't say law enforcement, policing, remember.
Old habits.
Yes, and it's amazing the conversations that we have around the word change and how words matter. So look at thecurve.org, talk to us, love to have those conversations.
Do you want to know how much words matter? I just was sent this Stanford study just this morning. Somebody sent me a Stanford study. Here's how powerful words are. When politicians talk about crime as a beast, people want more law enforcement. When they talk about crime as a virus, people want to know the root cause and they're more open to social reforms. Words matter, words matter, words matter.
100% words matter, and we are definitely behind that and working within our agencies collectively to affect change through how we create culture change and through words and how we speak and the words we use when we talk about policing. One of the things that you were talking about when you talk about metrics, in law enforcement, our metrics are policing.
Say it with me. Policing.
Policing. It's very hard.
The metrics for law enforcement are arrests.
Yes, exactly.
The metrics for policing are much broader.
So when I first met Simon and we had this conversation, and I said, well, I'm a deputy sheriff. It's hard for me to say police, right? I've grown up in an organization where we don't use that term because we're deputy sheriffs. And so we had a very nice dialogue around the difference, and so I'm still working on it, but it definitely is a challenge when you don't come from a police agency. So. But it's important to reframe that thinking. And to talk about reframing our metrics of success in policing is difficult because we gauge people's success based on how many arrests they make, how many stops, their stats. How do we talk about awarding people for just being good people or being that trustworthy partner, or I don't know, what is something else that people we could build on? How do we gauge that person and say that person is ready for the next level when all of our metrics of success are all statistic driven?
Right. So there are multiple ways. This is one of the reasons why teaching people how to lead as they make their way up the ranks means they're now qualified to assess the people who work for them, right? By the way, the statistical metrics are a metric. It's just not the only metric. It's like if you go on a date with somebody, physical attraction is a metric, but it's not the only metric, right? You want to know their character before you marry them.
It's a big part, though, right?
Yeah. It's a metric, right? It's an important metric, but it's not the only metric. And it's the same thing here. The stuff that's easy to see, easy to count matters. It just doesn't matter as much as we're talking about it. So 360 reviews matter. A good leader who is good at assessing people matters. Who you hire, recruiting matters. Are you recruiting with videos that just show people, bashing down doors and, chasing people? Because you'll recruit a certain personality who sees those videos. Or is that in there, but it's not the thing you're leading with? It's because you'll recruit to the thing that you show. So you were even recruiting right. And then my favorite one is peer review. And when I talk about peer review, there's formal peer review. The Army Rangers do a form of peer review, which is brilliant, which I think police should adopt, but different conversation. But one of my favorite ways of peer review is you ask the organization, who in your agency do you wish you were more like? Who do you admire? Who lives and embodies our values better than anybody, that we should all aspire to be more like them, right? And it has to be values-based. And they have to nominate someone. They have to write an essay. You make it a little bit difficult. You can't make it too easy because you want people to put in effort. They have to write an essay. A group of volunteers will go through the essays, interview all the people, and assess who is the best embodiment of our values, right? And then you have a little event where you read out the essays, and I've seen this done. It's amazing. And the version that I've seen done is they secretly fly in or invite the parents of the person who's to be hidden. And when they call out the name, the parents come out and say, this is the person you raised. We want you to know the child you raised. Look how they are admired. Without exception, it is rarely, if ever, the highest individual performer. But it is the person that people trust the most, look up to the most, and rely on the most. It is your most gifted leader. That person is your most gifted leader. And when somebody gets promotion, people get pissed off. Why did they get the promotion? When these people win their award, no one is pissed off. So I think peer review, because when you work for the attention of the chief, you're all working for one person's love. But when you're peer reviewed, you're working for the love of everybody, and it's a much more powerful and higher reward. There's always tears. There's always tears.
You know, this has been a really awesome conversation so far, Simon. So I just want to thank you, first of all, for being here with us. But for anyone in the audience that might know me, you know I always like to keep shit real. And I'm sorry, I use bad words. Go ahead and write an evaluation. I'm sorry, I can't help it. Okay.
Is that what it says on your patch? Keep shit real.
Yeah, exactly. Yes,
100.
That's coming next week.
Yes.
So the theme of this conference is the last of the firsts, and we continue to have firsts in so many different ways. April and I are the firsts in our organization, still in the year 2024. The problem that we're seeing is that, you know, this is a women's leadership conference, right? The problem that we're seeing is that women are not promoting, they are not taking on special assignments. I don't know if they're not inspired, I don't know if they don't feel supported, but we are seeing the well dry up of female leadership, and it's very concerning to me. And so I want to know, like, keep it real. What can we do as women? How do we inspire other women? How do we say you don't have to be a world-class sprinter to take the sergeant's test, right? You don't have to have your freaking PhD before you decide to promote. Like, we always hold this super high standard for ourselves that just isn't realistic. And we always say, I'm not ready. You're absolutely ready.
You're ready. Take the test.
So this is not unique to policing. This is pervasive across private sector as well. There's studies that are done that when there's a promotion or a new job and it requires 10 things, men will apply for the job if they have 6. Women won't apply for the job until they have 9 or 10.
Is it 6 or more like 4?
So
Say,
what's that?
well, yeah. Mediocre.
And I've seen it. I've seen it in meetings where I've seen like a client say, well, we really wish we had this. And the guy entrepreneur goes, we'll totally do that for you. I'm like, you don't have that. They're like, we'll figure it out, right? Whereas I've sat next to a female entrepreneur and like the client goes, we really wish we had that. I'm like, you have that. They're like, it's not ready. I'm like, just, you know? So it is a pervasive thing, and we could discuss the reasons why. I mean, I have a theory. I have a friend who's a female entrepreneur. These are her words, not mine. I always have to caveat. She thinks men make better entrepreneurs than women. I know. Ooh, right? Here's the theory. The social hierarchies of who's the social initiator still exist. It's right? Like the boy has to ask the girl to prom, otherwise the boy doesn't go to prom. The girl can wait to be asked to prom and she'll go to prom, right? Like that still exists to some degree. And so from a pretty young age, boys have to learn the skill of risk, rejection. Risk, rejection. And they learn to build that muscle and not take it so personally and just try it again. And women, as girls, don't get that practice. And so as adults, risk, rejection, meh, right? Where for women, it's much scarier. Now, one could make an argument that with social media and dating apps, that nobody's learning the skill. We'll see how that plays out in 15 years. But I think that might be a part of it. It's just a culturalization from when we were kids in traditional. So I think if part of it is let's teach our daughters to like go get the thing that they want and not wait for it. And learn to lick their wounds and be rejected. It's gonna happen a lot. And failure sucks, and you're gonna be like, okay, try again. Like that muscle needs to be flexed. I think a large part of it is how you talk about being in the profession to young girls when you go to schools. You know, there is such thing as a difference between male leadership and female leadership. It is different because mom and dad are a thing. Like when a male leader yells at somebody, it's just like, all right, they said that, I'm moving on with my life. When a female leader yells, it's like your mom yelling at you. It actually hurts more, right?
Take notes,
Yeah.
right? And be yelling a little bit more.
It's different. We respond differently because of traditional, household mom and dads. And that's, again, how we were raised. We can't ignore all of that. That's all our own histories. But I think the way that you go talk about what it means to be in policing as a woman, when you go talk to schools, I think to talk about some of the things like, some kids want to be teachers because they want to take care of people. Well, are you talking about the opportunity to take care of people? Like in a leadership position, you get to take care of people. It's the same, you can take care of somebody as a nurse, but that's just strangers every day. Here you get to take care of the people who will put on that uniform and say, I take an oath and I'm scared. Like a good day for a cop is coming home alive, right? That's a scary job. And to hold space for a job that is consumed by fear that we don't talk about. One thing I would recommend to everybody, you can read it in Harvard Business Review if you want. It's a case study about the Shell Ursa, U-R-S-A. It was a huge oil rig in the 1980s, owned by Shell Oil Company. I also, if you want to just go sit on the floor in Barnes & Noble's, I wrote about it in my book called The Infinite Game. You can just go read that chapter. You know what I can do? Somebody make a note to remind me. I will extract that chapter and make it a PDF and send it out to you. So the Shell Ursa is a very, very, very important case study because it was a huge, big oil rig that was the biggest offshore oil rig in the world, and it came with all new challenges, performance and safety, right? And the boss of the oil rig knew the challenge, and he went down a very unconventional path, and he hired this sort of San Francisco hippie consultant, literally, I'm not being pejorative, to help him, and he basically got his team of roughnecks to sit around in circles and talk about like their childhoods, their struggles, their families. They hated at the beginning. They started crying. They started learning about each other, that one had a kid who was terminally ill, like nobody knew, They went a little too far. They were massaging each other's feet. You don't have to go that far. They went too far. But the point is they sat in these circles and they talked about their lives. And they became very comfortable being very open and vulnerable with each other about their private lives. They'd all cried in front of each other now. And by the time they got on the oil rig, and these are roughnecks, like this is one of the most dangerous macho jobs in the world, right? Once they got out on the oil rig, because they were comfortable with each other, they had no problem saying, I need help, I made a mistake, I screwed up, can you help me out over here? And their safety record was the best in the industry. And their performance record was the best in the industry. And it's all because they got comfortable saying, I don't know, I need help, can you help me, right? And so they did it over here, and I cannot tell you the power of how you use roll call. Like roll call is an amazing opportunity. How often is it a missed opportunity? Like talk about things that are difficult, that you're struggling with, and lead as a chief or a sheriff, And the more that cops trust each other to be vulnerable at station, I guarantee you'll see quality of policing, quality of interaction with the general public, quality just will go up.
Just amazing. I mean, every time I hear you talk, and Angela and I will talk about this a lot, just really powerful and inspiring, and really gets us to a point where we can really understand the work that needs to be done in our profession and how we can start really cultivating those human skills. And as much as I've read your work and listened to your podcast, the thing I find the most amazing is as soon as I'm done listening, I walk away with something. I turn it off, I get out of my car, I go in my office, I can use something that I just heard you say within the first 5 minutes of having a conversation or within a meeting sometime that day. Well, this is our final question because we're running out of time and we would love to sit here and talk to you for even longer, but what could you say to the audience that they could put into action today?
So we've talked about a lot of things, and to some people, the things that we're talking about are legit scary, right? They've labeled me some hippie weirdo. Let me tell you, furthest from it. I don't want to live in a hippie commune. Like, I like performance, I like action, but I recognize that we're social animals and we're human beings. And we're talking about things in the complete form, and it sounds scary. You don't start at 100. You start at 1, right? And just take little risks. Try little things, right? And by little things, it could be go read the Shell Ursa article. Just read it. Don't do anything. Just read it. It'll sit in your head. Just read it. Go take an online class about listening. I sent my girlfriend through a 3-day listening course.
I'm sure she loved
It still didn't work, did
that.
it?
Yeah, yeah.
That I had taken prior.
Leadership.
And let me tell you, the power of taking a 3-day listening course, I'll give you one example of how it worked. Do not bring facts to an emotional gunfight, right? Here's how we used to fight, right? 6 times this week you did this to me. Actually, I did it 4 times. It doesn't matter. What I'm telling you is how I feel. It does matter. If you're gonna have a fight with me, get your facts right. No.
I think I've said that.
Do not correct someone's facts when they are emotional. The point is, we do that in policing all the time. Someone comes to us and say, hey boss, this went wrong or I'm struggling, and we correct facts. Facts are irrelevant when emotions are involved. You can correct the facts later, but they're actually irrelevant because somebody's telling you how they feel. Anyway, go take a listening class, go listen to a podcast, do little things. The next time somebody in roll call asks you a question that you don't know the answer to, instead of giving bullshit that you're used to giving, say, you know what? I don't know. Start there. Just start with tiny little things. Or I'll get back to you. Let me look that up. Or I don't remember. It is so hard when you're in a leadership position where we falsely believe that our authority comes from how smart we are, and having all the answers. Nothing could be further from the truth. Your authority comes from how good you are at looking after people and making them feel seen, heard, and understood. That's it. And those leaders are the ones that we leave jobs to follow into new jobs. The really, really smart ones, we wish them luck in their new endeavors. Right? We like them. We just wouldn't quit our jobs to follow them. It's the ones who took care of us, who made us feel loved, who were there for us in our hard times, who made us feel like we can knock on their door and say, hey, you got a minute? Those are the ones we quit our jobs and follow. Wouldn't you want to be one of those leaders? Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know they were yelling at us to be out of time. I have to add one more thing. And I can only say this to this room. You have a huge advantage as women, okay? And I will tell you why. Traditional male characteristics are things like aggression and decisiveness, right? Traditional female characteristics are things like patience, maternal instinct, listening, right? We don't need more female leaders. We need more leaders who act like females.
Yes.
And women just happen to be better at that. So yes, we want a well-balanced leader, of course, but don't try to diminish or suppress all those skills that you've had a lifetime building just because you're in a leadership position in a male-dominated, testosterone-driven profession. I know military leaders, some of the best military leaders I know who are women. They embrace their womanhood. They cry because they love their people so much. They can be literally brought to tears for love of their people. And they make jokes and they wear diamond earrings because they celebrate their womanhood every single day in this male machismo profession. Everything I talk about when I talk about human skills are traditionally usually associated with womanhood. You have a huge advantage to build great policing cultures. I would not be surprised if the future of policing and the modernization of policing culture comes more from this room than anywhere else in the country.
Woo!
Thank you so much for that, Simon. And then my challenge to all of us in this room is just to go out and do one thing. And I'm going to let Angela close us out.
Well, I was really hoping that we were going to have time to take audience questions, but this time went by so quickly. But really, the reason why I wanted to have audience questions is because I wanted to throw out this disclaimer for you to get your ass up, ask your question, and sit the fuck down.
By the way,
sorry I didn't get to say
please
that.
come to all of my events.
I'm sorry I didn't get to say that. But first, next time. Simon, seriously, thank you so much. When you say words matter, your words are so powerful and so inspiring. Thank you so much for taking your time today to be with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. It's a joy.